Welcome back to Okaloosa Today. I'm Doug Rayner with the City of Destin, and today I have the privilege of talking with the newly elected Councilman Jim Foreman. And a little later on the show, we're going to talk about the business survey and a citizen survey with our Human Resources Director, Chuck Garcia, who will join me a little later on the show. But right now, I'd like to talk with Jim Foreman, brand new councilman, but not new to the City Council. Welcome for being here.
Thank you, Doug.
We've done this with the other councilors that were elected this year. You came a little later in the year, but just a little introduction to our audience and to who you are and what you're doing here in the City of Destin. So first of all, thank you for running for City Council. We appreciate your insight, and we want to welcome you to the City of Destin again.
Thank you, Doug.
Where did you grow up? I think that's something that we were talking about earlier, so let's introduce you to our public.
Okay, actually, my father was in the Corps of Engineers, and he was assigned to Vicksburg, Mississippi, to the experiment station. And so he met my mother there in the 30s, and so that's where I was born, as were my two sisters were born there. And we stayed there for the full assignment that he had there, and didn't move ultimately for many years, but we wound up traveling all over the United States and as he was reassigned. Ultimately, I ended up in New Jersey in high school. I graduated from Morristown High School in New Jersey and went to college there. I went to Rutgers University. Go Rutgers. And I think the experience there was a good one. I've met many friends there over the period of years. Later on, I went into the military service from college, and I stayed there 21 years. I hadn't intended to make it a career, but that was the Vietnam era. And so we basically, I went into the military service, became a helicopter pilot, retired in 1980, ultimately moved to Destin in the 80s, early 80s. And it was at that point in time I became very interested in the political process. I served on a number of the committees there. So that's basically how I started off and how I got there.
How you ended up here. You were a former councilman. This is not your first go. You were on the council from 96 to 2000 and 2002 to 2006. I guess things have changed a little bit over those terms. How are things a little different right now than they were back then?
Well, those were the growth days. Those were the days in which you had something like 5 major developments going on at the same time, in which there was no meeting of the council that wasn't a major undertaking with, and we had many what they called quasi-judicial meetings where we had to consider land use, and very long meetings. We would go long into the evening on it, and a number of the people that are around now who served with me then are people that I'm still good friends with, even though we differed at the time. But it had to do with how Destin would grow in its future.
And we're going to actually talk about that in just a minute when we come back to the economic challenges that Destin's seeing, because you've seen us politically and in the business arena around, and how we've grown and how we've gotten to where we are now. But something I wanted to ask you about that I think our audience would like to know about is you were actually the interim, or had the interim position on council back when Larry Hines left in August to run for a different office. So you were selected by council to take his place for the interim position.
Correct.
What made you decide to do that?
Well, I happen to have a neighbor who was on the council before. And so we were walking our dogs one morning, and, and he said, "Jim, have you considered filling in the position?" And I said, very honestly, no. He said, "You really ought to consider it, because I think you would have the experience there, and it would be helpful." So I thought about it, and I thought, well, I don't know of anything more important than serving the city. And so I put in my application, and I'm very grateful that the council selected me, and I'm glad to be back there.
And we're glad to have you. You also decided during that time period, which is pretty short. We had a lot of things going on. The budget got passed.
That's true.
There's some comp plan things that are going on now. I know that your experience has been very helpful, but what made you decide to run for that permanent position and you were elected to in November?
Well, it's like dropping you in the middle of a football game or something is going on. We were already involved in the budget. The comprehensive plan was something that I had been through 2 or 3 times in the past, which is something that we're doing right now.
Right.
Many workshops. And so those were things that were ongoing, and I thought, well, I'm there. I'm going ahead and I'm going to run for it. And I did, and fortunately I prevailed.
Right, and so you basically hit the ground running. You actually never stopped running because it was full speed from August for your interim to now.
Yeah.
So let's get a feel of your ideas for the city right now as a whole. We kind of talked briefly about the boom back in the days when you were on council before. What do you see are some of the challenges and some of the positives that the city has going on right now?
Well, I remember a time in the early 2000s where we commonly thought that Destin was recession-proof and that nothing would ever stop us.
Because so much development was going on.
There was so much going on, and the revenue that was coming in was something that we, I guess, took for granted in many ways and should not have, because it wasn't to be taken for granted. But we saw that as then, and now, of course, throughout the country, we've got a situation where property values have gone down, and where you have foreclosures, you have low real estate turnover, particularly in commercial. And how I see that affects Destin is the fact that we have to do better with a lot less. I mean, we have to take the dollars that come through the door and we have to make them count. And that's something that has to be considered. So that means that you've got to look at economic development as we never did before.
Right.
I mean, it was a given to us. Now we're looking at our shopping centers, and we're seeing vacancies in them, and we're seeing things that we never guessed would happen. And although the tourist industry seems to be continuing as a major part of our economy, we need to make sure that we take every step we can, working with the Chamber of Commerce and working with the Economic Development Council to make new businesses welcome in the city.
Right, and I think one of the things that's going to help us with that is working with our CRAs, and something we discussed before was the importance of the CRAs to the city, and you were instrumental in getting those started. So tell us a little bit about how important the CRA is to our economic development.
Well, at the time that we were back in 1995 or 6, we did a open city session that had to do with visioning, and brought in everybody and said, how would you like the city of Destin to look in future years? And that was Visions 2000. And out of that, there were some ideas in there about districting the city in terms of the harbor, which is a gemstone for us,
right,
and the town center and other parts of the city. And so out of that grew the idea and concept behind the Community Redevelopment Agency, which is under state law. It gives you the opportunity to do a lot of detailed planning for the future. And it also, it gives you funding sources that you don't normally have to do it. And so that was the purpose behind it. And it developed very well at the beginning. And the harbor still continues to be in fairly good shape. The town center is not so fortunate because of the property values in the area. So we're trying to focus on the town center.
And that will be a key to the economic development process that we're going through right now.
Exactly.
And I think the council's looking to draft an economic development plan in the near future that will give us a guide to move forward with some economic development for the area.
Yes. We need to be proactive in it. We can't just sit back and expect that Santa Claus is going to show up.
That's right. That's
right.
Because
he won't.
Well, you have a lot of insight and a lot of very specialized practice in the area of economic development and growth for the city. I know that we appreciate it very much and look forward to you working with us over the next couple of years. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we take a quick break?
No, Doug, I think I'm very fortunate to live in the city of Destin. It's a wonderful place to live, wonderful place to vacation. So I encourage anybody in the future who wants to enjoy themselves to come see us.
Well, we've certainly created a great place here. And speaking of something also just a minute ago, business engagement, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk with Chuck Garcia, our Human Resources Manager, about a business survey and a citizen survey that's going to come out, so stay tuned.